Hello, my friend. If you're listening to this tonight, maybe it's because your soul has been whispering a quiet question lately. Am I really growing in faith? Or am I just getting older in the same place? You see, spiritual maturity doesn't always come with age. It comes with surrender. And sometimes the older we get, the more we realize we've spent so many years believing in God, but not truly trusting Him. So tonight, I want to share with you 10 quiet signs that your faith is truly growing. Not in the loud, dramatic ways the world might recognize, but in the sacred, invisible ways heaven celebrates. 1. You begin to trust God's timing more than your own. You've probably learned by now, God's clock doesn't tick like ours does. Sometimes He makes us wait. Not because He's cruel, but because He's kind. Because He knows that what we think we're ready for could crush us if given too soon. I once had a patient, a woman in her 50s, who told me through tears, "I prayed for God to change my life for 20 years. And He did, but only after He changed me." That's the thing about divine timing. It's not about getting what you want, it's about becoming who you're meant to be. And when your faith starts to mature, you stop rushing heaven. You stop comparing your journey to everyone else's highlight reel. You stop asking, "Why not me?" And instead, you whisper, "Lord, prepare me." That's when peace begins to grow roots in your heart. 2. You start to desire what God desires. You used to chase what the world said mattered: success, comfort, approval. But one day they lose their shine. You wake up and the things that once thrilled you now feel empty. That's when the Spirit starts reshaping your appetite. You find yourself praying less for blessings and more for transformation. Not, "God, give me this," but, "God, make me more like you." You start caring about things you used to ignore: the lonely neighbor, the coworker struggling silently, the injustice that breaks God's heart. I remember a man from my church, a businessman, who once confessed to me, "I don't feel alive anymore, Pastor. I have everything I dreamed of, but I feel spiritually bankrupt." So I told him, maybe it's not that you have too little. Maybe you have too much that doesn't belong to your soul. When your faith grows, your desires change. You begin to crave holiness more than happiness. You start praying not for comfort, but for alignment, for your heart to beat in rhythm with His. 3. You discover the power of stillness. Have you noticed how noisy our world has become? We wake up to notifications, fall asleep to headlines, and fill every silence with sound, podcasts, playlists, people. But spiritual growth often begins when the noise fades. When you finally stop talking at God and start listening to Him. I've seen people fear silence because silence exposes what's really inside us: the anxiety, the doubts, the loneliness. But silence is also where the whisper of God becomes loud enough to be heard. When your faith matures, you no longer need constant stimulation. You begin to slow down. You take walks without your phone. You sit in stillness, not to be productive, but to be present. And in those quiet moments, heaven begins to speak. 4. You start living with eternity in mind. This is one of the deepest shifts you'll ever experience. You stop asking, "What makes me happy right now?" and start asking, "What will matter when all of this is gone?" I've stood by the bedside of dying men and women for decades. And not once has anyone said, "I wish I had worked more," or "I wish I had bought that house." No, they say things like, "I wish I had forgiven sooner. I wish I had told my children how much I loved them. I wish I had trusted God earlier." That's eternal perspective. When your faith matures, you see bitterness as too expensive to carry, resentment as too heavy to drag toward heaven. You realize this world is not your home, it's your classroom. And pain? It's not punishment, it's preparation. 5. You become a vessel of peace for others. When people are around you, they feel something different: a stillness, a calm, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. It's not that your life is perfect, far from it. It's that you've learned how to invite Christ into your chaos. You don't talk to impress, you talk to bless. You don't rush to defend yourself, you pause to pray. You listen more, and when you do speak, your words carry weight because they come from a heart anchored in grace. I had a nurse friend who told me once, some people walk into the hospital room and bring anxiety, but others walk in and the atmosphere changes, like peace itself just entered the room. That, my friend, is what the presence of Christ looks like when it lives inside you. 6. You begin to see strength in weakness. When your faith matures, you stop pretending you have it all together, because you've learned that your broken places are where God shines the brightest. Paul said it beautifully, "When I am weak, then I am strong." You begin to share your scars, not your trophies. You stop boasting about victories and start testifying about grace. I've counseled people who thought they had to hide their pain from God, as if the Almighty could be fooled by a forced smile. But listen, your weakness is not your disqualification. It's your doorway to divine intimacy. Every tear you've ever shed is a prayer that words couldn't carry, and God heard every one. 7. Your priorities start to shift quietly. One of the most subtle, but powerful, signs of spiritual growth is when the things that once felt urgent no longer do. You used to measure success by applause. Now you measure it by obedience. You used to crave recognition. Now you crave quiet faithfulness. You look at your calendar differently, not as a to-do list, but as a list of opportunities to glorify God. I once asked a retired teacher what success meant to her after 40 years in the classroom. She smiled and said, "Success? That's when I can look back and know that even one child saw Christ in me." That's the shift, from chasing results to living for meaning, from seeking to be known to seeking to be faithful. 8. You learn to love without condition. And oh, this one hurts to grow into. Because loving unconditionally means releasing the need to be right, to be understood, to be repaid. You start loving people who don't deserve it, because you finally realize that you didn't deserve it either. Someone once asked me, "Pastor, how do you know your faith is growing?" I said, "When forgiving someone doesn't mean they were right. It just means you've decided to be free." True love isn't blind. It sees everything and still chooses grace. And every time you forgive, heaven takes note. Because forgiveness isn't just kindness, it's warfare against bitterness. 9. You find joy in serving. There was a time when recognition mattered. Now you find joy in the unseen, the small, quiet acts of kindness that no one applauds but God sees. You begin to serve, not to be noticed, but because love compels you. You discover that washing someone's feet, listening without judging, praying for someone in secret, these are the sacred acts that build the kingdom. I once knew a man who cleaned the church bathrooms every Sunday for 20 years. He never wanted a title, never wanted praise. When I asked him why he did it, he said, "If Jesus could wash feet, I can wash floors." That's faith. Humble, steady, joyful faith. 10. You begin to see pain as part of God's good plan. When your faith is young, pain feels like punishment. But when it matures, pain becomes your teacher. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "Lord, what are you trying to show me through this?" I've watched people go through suffering that would break most of us. Cancer, betrayal, loss, and yet they radiate peace. They tell me, "It hurts, but I'm learning to see His hand in it." And maybe that's what true faith looks like. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose within it. Knowing that even in the darkness, God's fingerprints are on everything. So my friend, maybe tonight you don't feel strong. Maybe your prayers have gone unanswered. Maybe you're still waiting for a breakthrough that never seems to come. But remember this, growth doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes it feels like pruning. Sometimes it looks like loss. But even when you can't see it, God is shaping you. He's not in a hurry. He's not frustrated with you. He's patient, endlessly patient. And every day that you surrender, even just a little more, you are becoming someone heaven already recognizes. So tonight, before you close your eyes, ask Him, Lord, make me faithful in the small things. Teach me to trust your timing, to love like you love, and to find peace in your plan. Because when you do, you'll wake up one day and realize you're not who you used to be. You've grown, quietly, beautifully, faithfully. And that, my friend, is what spiritual maturity really looks like.